A program at a dead end. So says the United Nations chief negotiator at the UN's nuclear agency, the IAEA. That agency votes to order Tehran to stop building any new nuclear facilities and come clean about its disputed program that many believe is aimed at building a nuclear bomb. But Iran fighting back, saying it may now end cooperation with the UN. Does this mean an Iranian nuke could be even closer? Joining us now from London is Ambassador John Bolton, the former United States ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor. Ambassador, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, critics are saying this morning, what took the UN so long?
Well, it's a very good question for which there's not a very good answer. You know, this resolution passed by the IAEA on Friday has no real-world effect. The IAEA has no enforcement authority. So when we hear the Obama administration say what a great diplomatic victory it is for Russia and China to support the resolution, it really isn't, because they're just supporting a piece of paper that has no effect. A real diplomatic victory would be to get Russia and China to support action in the UN Security Council for really strict sanctions, which has been and I think remains unlikely. So I think the UN role here is going to be very limited.
But wait a minute. Everyone this morning is saying what a great diplomatic victory this is, that Russia and China finally signed on. 25 nations around the world voted against Iran on this resolution, and you're saying it really doesn't mean much?
Right. It's the IAEA has no way of enforcing this decision. In fact, the Bush administration, once the IAEA referred it to the Security Council, wanted to keep things in the Security Council, which does have enforcement authority. The real test is whether Russia and China will now do something to impose stricter sanctions on Iran through a Security Council vote. That'll be the real test, and there's no indication that they're prepared to do that.
What do you think the chances are of that? I mean, the president had his meeting in Moscow, didn't seem to get very much out of China in terms of pressuring Iran further.
No, look, Russia and China have at least have the virtue of consistency over the past 4 years or so. They have watered down sanctions resolutions in the Security Council. They have resisted tough sanctions. And everything they've been saying, despite touting by the White House about movement by both countries, is that their position remains the same today as it has been for the past 3 or 4 years. And what Iran has been signaling in response to the IAEA resolution is they're not moved by it. They intend to continue their program. So basically, we're continuing as we did before the resolution on Friday on all sides.
You know, and Iran is even saying more than that this morning. They're threatening potentially pulling out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. What would it mean if Tehran is not bound at all? Not that they've paid attention to it, but not bound at all by any of the UN resolutions under the treaties that they've signed?
Well, you know, they're playing a very skillful diplomatic game, the Iranians are, because there are many people in the U.S., in the State Department, in foreign ministries in Europe who believe, in a sense, that it's worse for Iran to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and withdraw from the IAEA than it is for them to pursue nuclear weapons, because this very limited vision these people have is that the only solution comes through the IAEA and the UN. I think we've seen over 7 years now that doesn't bring us to any solution other than that Iran gets closer to nuclear weapons. But Iran is preying on the feeling that these people have that you have to keep things inside the UN system. A very skillful move by Iran, a further piece of evidence they are not going to be negotiated out of their nuclear weapons program.
And, you know, and finally, we talk about the nations that supported this, supported the West. Guess who voted no? Cuba, of course, but also Venezuela. Hugo Chavez and Venezuela supporting Iran in its nuclear effort. What significance is there in that?
Well, it shows that without strict sanctions by the Security Council, that is to say, without a real UN decision that's binding and really imposes economic pain on Iran, that there are plenty of nations around the world that would help Iran evade any additional sanctions that might come outside the UN, stricter EU provisions, for example. So I think we're in a situation, it's been clear for some time, stricter sanctions against Iran are not going to work. Iran is on a path to nuclear weapons. If you had to predict right now, the most likely outcome is that in a very short period of time, Iran does get nuclear weapons. And the only wild card out there, I think, that can stop that is if Israel decides at some point to use preemptive military force against Iran. I don't think they've made a decision, but I think that's really the only thing between Iran and its long-time goal of deliverable nuclear weapons.
Oh, that is a very daunting prediction. The president has said maybe more sanctions by the end of the year, and we'll see how this continues to play out. U.S. Ambassador John Bolton, always good to see you. Thank you for joining us, as always.
Thank you.
Jamie?
And we'll speak to Ambassador Gillerman in the next hour. Meanwhile, police